Okay, so Weapons is a movie I've been looking forward to for a very long time, ever since I saw the trailer a few months back. I'd never heard of this movie, but it's from the same writer and director of the movie Barbarian, which was a horror movie that came out a few years back. And when I finally got around to seeing that, I was thoroughly impressed, and I highly recommend checking out that movie if you're a fan of the horror genre. When it comes to Weapons now, honestly, the best way to explain it, if you haven't heard of this movie, that means you haven't seen the trailer. And let's just, you know what? I'm just going to show you the beginning of that trailer because that's the best way to set the precedence for what's going on in this movie.
This is a true story. So this one Wednesday is like a normal day for the whole school. But today was different because the night before, at 2:17 in the morning, every kid woke up, got out of bed, walked downstairs and into the dark, and they never came back.
Right? So that's your setup for this movie. That's what the trailer showed, and I don't mind showing it because that's also just the very beginning of this movie. It just makes you sit up, pay attention. The scene as it plays out in the movie is even more effective than it is in the trailer, and it really sets the tone for what you're in for. I got a little bit of the movie Prisoner vibes from Prisoners with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. It's like that. It's like a discount version because I don't want to put this movie up on this huge because Prisoners is an amazing movie. I don't want to put this on the same level as that movie. They're also vastly different. It just had a similar tone and mystery around the disappearance, right? Whoever put the trailer together did a very good job. Props to that person. They definitely deserve a promotion. We don't usually get trailers that oversell the movie and in doing so show too much. Very happy that that wasn't the case here. However, now I don't want to say that this is necessarily a bad thing, but with a setup for a premise like that and so much mystery and so many questions asked right at the outset, the movie sort of shoots itself in the foot because it's like so many other horror movies that tell you how horrific something is, but they never show you, and then you're left up to your imagination. And it's true that whatever you can come up with in your imagination is always going to be far more terrifying than whatever explanation is going to get laid out before you. And in a way, that sort of happens. The filmmaker did that to himself because he is now responsible for giving us a movie and an explanation for what is going on. And I mean, he does his best, but I still was left with that feeling like, oh man, I don't know. It would have been better. I wish I'd just seen the trailer and never went and saw the movie. Not because it's bad, but because I was so intrigued by that premise. So the movie then begins from there, goes forward from that point, and we are focused on a community reeling from this catastrophic incident where there are no answers and it's just such an outlandish concept. Like, how could this happen? Why did this happen? Where did they go? Why did they do what they did? And you get great performances from Josh Brolin, who clocks into work, shows up, does his best as a father of one of the missing kids. You've got little Miss, I always forget her name, from Ozarks, and she just played the Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie. She plays the teacher of the classroom where all of these kids were in grade 3 together or whatever. And you see the mental and emotional strain it has on both the parents and this teacher, obviously and understandably to a certain point, with not having any answers for what's going on. A lot of the parents are hyper focused on the teacher because that's the common denominator for all of the children, right? So you get to see her who genuinely cared about these kids. She's already reeling from the situation, and now she's got all the other stress from the parents come on her shoulders. And it goes to that crazy real life horrific length of, like, she starts getting harassing phone calls, she starts getting harassed at her home, her car gets vandalized, stuff like that, because people don't have a place to put their emotions because it's such a crazy situation that they all find themselves in. And it is a horror movie, let's be very clear about that. It's definitely this writer and director's own brand of horror. And again, if you've seen Barbarian, you sort of know what you're getting in for. It's part comedy. I shouldn't say comedy. Like, it's part horror. It's part real world people. The people in these two movies that he's written so far, they feel very real. Like, these are people that you would run into on the street. There's no hyperbolic craziness. Not with the regular, characters in the movie. And I really applaud him for that. He's really good at mixing classic horror, but also just run-of-the-mill normal stuff and how people behave on the daily, and I appreciate that for sure. For me, the movie, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and we can't talk about it too much because, again, I don't want to give too much away. If you like horror movies, I highly recommend checking this out. But I think by the time you've seen it, it's going to end up being one of those movies where it's like, okay, I've seen it now. This is not a movie I'm going to put on every year. Maybe that's just like my initial gut reaction right now. It's going to be a movie that's going to be really fun to share with friends and family and sit and watch it with them to see how they can unravel what's going on before, the story itself does it. Once it does get to that point and you sort of start to learn the hows that things were shaping up or played out the way they played out, if you, for me anyway, I was able to sort of piece things together quite quickly. Okay, this is where we're going with this. And right before the climax was a little dragged out. And the movie before that, from the opening when the kids disappear right up to that moment before the climax, let's say, it's long. Like for a horror movie, this is like a 2 hour and 8-minute movie or something like that. That's long for horror. And you do kind of notice it. Everybody in this movie put in great performances. And the structure of the story, though, however, is we hyper focus on individual characters, and then we see eventually how they all sort of interact with each other, right? So you'll get focused on Justine the teacher, then you get focused on Archer the father, then you get focused on a couple other characters, some that are really close to the kids and some that really have nothing to do with the kids, but find themselves sort of pulled into this situation. And again, the filmmaker's really good at getting great performances out of his actors, but he spent so much time with these other characters. There was a point where I was like, well, what were we supposed to be focusing on again? How did this movie start? Right, the missing kids. How did I forget about that? And I kind of put a little bit of onus on the screenwriter for that, just because you made me care about these characters and you spent just a little bit too much time on them, enough to make me forget that that's the main point of this movie was the kids, right? So I mean, if they had just tightened up some of those side stories a little bit. It's funny for me to say side stories. There isn't really any side stories. It all matters. It all comes together and it all is happening sort of at the same time. But again, we almost got a little bit too much dedicated time to these individual characters, which worked out great. I got to know all the characters, but like I said, it kind of just detracted from the overarching horror of all of these kids effing off in the middle of the night. Anyway, it's a movie absolutely filled with intrigue. It doesn't have any cheap jump scares. All of those there's jump scares for sure, but they all kind of sort of make sense. And I really like the fact that by the time the movie plays out in the horrific way that it plays out, when you stop to think about what you just saw and the answers you got and the answers you didn't get, I really appreciate the filmmaker holding back and not over-explaining his hand when it came to the exact reasoning for one of these characters on how this was all going to work in the end, right? So very enjoyable, very high production, thoroughly enjoyed it, very twisted, and it's wholly, I shouldn't say wholly unique because I really don't think anything is these days, but this filmmaker and a handful of others, they are sure trying to give us things that we have not seen before, or at least present stories in different ways. And that is something that I can absolutely get behind. So Weapons, for what it's worth, gets 2 huge thumbs up from me.